tuning into Alpha Mughals, a show where we speak to some of the finest investing minds about how they are looking at the current investing scenario and how are they building their portfolio for the times ahead. Our guest today, well, it needs no introduction, but I will still choose to use a couple of lines. One of the lines from their website, and another is something that he told me on email 2 days back. He told me a lot of things on email 2 days back. I'll use them over the course of the show. But the website says, our purpose is to influence efficient capital allocation in the Indian economy. We hold the companies that we hold for long periods of time with little or no churn, which allows us to capture the benefits of long-term compounding and deliver superior returns. In this short world of people buying and selling in such short bursts, this is a refreshing change of sorts to hear and see. Another thing that he told me on an email a couple of days back, and this is very important, viewers. He says that beyond investing, we read endlessly. We read all sorts of stuff, as explained in the book, The Victory Project, and we read non-stop, typically one book per week. He's an author. He's been the MD of a sell-side firm very successfully. He's, over the last couple of years, or maybe a bit of a period here and there, become a buy-side champion of sorts, and his portfolios are doing really well. Pleasure to have you, Saurabh Mukherjea, on Alpha Mughals.
Thank you, Neeraj. Thanks for a very kind introduction. Thank you.
No, I just borrowed some of the lines, Saurabh. So, Saurabh, I think my first question to you would be, when I look at how you are going about your investing style, and please correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but from my perspective, when I look at your investing style versus a lot of other investing styles, and in 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but you are noticeably different. You have no qualms of taking exposures to companies which might be perceived to be expensive in current valuations. You have no qualms in buying companies which might not be trading very, very high volumes compared to what normal people look at as well. What sets you apart? What sets your theory apart from what is largely the popular parlance?
I think the first part, Neeraj, I would say, is it's not just me. There's a group of us who work together. This core group has been together for the best part of 15 years now. So, we've been working for most of our sort of working lives. We've been working with each other, and as a result, what's happened is whatever we do is an amalgamation of our skill sets. So I have some strengths, I have some weaknesses. Pramod Gubbi has strengths, he has weaknesses. Rakshit has strengths, weaknesses. Right. So if you put the group together, and not surprisingly, I've talked in the Victory Project about this part, that collaboration is the essence of success in highly creative, competitive industries. Collaboration is the essence of success, and therefore, by working together over 15 years, we've been able to build a unit where each of our strengths comes together and creates a sum which is greater than a whole which is greater than the sum of the parts, right? So 2 + 2, 5, not because of anything great I am doing, but because all of us have come together, pooled our strengths together, and it makes for a unique style of investing. I think the second thing is all of us, I suppose, to some extent, birds of a feather flock together. So all of us are more bent towards reading, more bent towards slightly intellectual turn of mind. And it so happens in this job that orientation actually is quite helpful. So just like if you want to be a great basketball player, it helps to be 6'5" or above. Similarly, if you want to be a successful fund manager, it helps to be a person who likes reading endlessly. Because what the stock market across the world does is the stock market overemphasizes short-term factors and underemphasizes longer-term factors, right? And if you're therefore willing to, you're someone who naturally cuts out noise. You're someone who's naturally introverted, someone who naturally just likes reading and thinking. You're able to play to your strengths and the stock market's weakness. The stock market's weakness is it does not emphasize the longer term enough. If you are able to do that because of your personality bent, you end up with slightly better outcomes than others. So I would say those are the main things which set us apart. The fact that we've been together for so long and we've built a cohesive unit which amalgamates many different types of personalities. And the second is most of us are oriented towards heavy duty reading. I might like reading books on psychology and English literature. Some of my colleagues like reading 15 years of annual reports on companies. To each his own, but that collection of heavy duty readers coming together into one group. And we just finished our weekly research call. The weekly research call is basically over the last 7 days, who's read how much and what have you read and what have we learned. And you pool it together every week. And then we agree that over the next 7 days, Rakshit will read this, Saurabh will read that, Sudhanshu will read this, and off we go again. That style of investing, I think, works very well in a stock market context.
Wow, interesting. And by the way, Saurabh, just to let you know, I mean, the format of this Alpha Moguls is slightly different in that I'll ask questions for the first few 20-25 minutes, and then I'll have guests who are logged in right now a chance to ask their questions to you. We'll, of course, avoid questions which are necessarily leading to a recommendatory stance. But whatever they have, I'll try and pose some of the relevant questions to you as well.
I'm happy to answer all of this. Just that I'm not a mogul in any sense of the word. I'm a middle class Joe sitting in an office in Bombay doing the best I can.
Yeah, well, which is turning out very well. But sort of just taking a leaf out of your previous answer, are you you are surely underplaying the role of how or is the reading leading you to be able to identify businesses in a different fashion, because you are kind of underplaying the role that each of your strengths collectively brings to figuring out which are the companies that will do really well over a period of time due to a variety of factors.
So let's just use that prism of reading to sort of think through why reading is so powerful, right? So let's start with this observation. Charlie Munger made this observation famously. Charlie Munger says he has never met a smart person in his life who does not read non-stop, right? Now, why does he say that? There must be a reason the great man says that reading has merit. So reading does, I think, three very powerful things from the context of an investor. Firstly, it develops your neural networks, and the development of the neural network allows you to think deeper. So, for example, if I take my colleague Tej Shah, the depth at which Tej is able to think through forensic accounting of Indian lenders arises from not just the fact that he's a chartered accountant, but also from the fact that he's a chartered accountant who reads decade or more of annual reports of lenders before Marcellus takes positions in those lenders, right? So it's a combination of someone doing the reading, doing it over long periods of time, over several years, the neural networks, the brain strengthening, allowing my colleague Tej Shah to go deeper, right? Think deeper about accounting of the lenders in whom we might take stakes, right? So that's the first benefit of reading. It forces you, it develops your mental muscle, so to speak. Just as a gymnast who sort of goes to the gym and works out for decades on end ends up with a exaggerated upper body. Similarly, a reader who reads nonstop, the brain expands. Thankfully, you and I can't see the expansion of the neural networks, right? The second benefit of reading is it necessarily, if you're going to be allocating a heavy duty part of your time to reading, necessarily you'll have less time for the noise, right? You'll have less time to sort of ponder over the P multiple and say, P zyada hai ya kam hai. You'll have less time to figure out what is the latest COVID death count in India and how do we compare to Brazil and China and so on. You'll have less time to figure out what is the latest from the RBI or from the Federal Reserve. So by focusing on reading, you're de-emphasizing noise. And by de-emphasizing noise, you're reducing portfolio churn. Because the more noise, you're all human beings, right? If I sit in front of a trading terminal all day long, and I keep looking at prices and PE multiples and latest news flash from central banks and latest earnings announcements, obviously my mind will get more inclined to trade and go with the market opinion. By reading, you're cutting yourself off, and not only is your brain getting stronger, your neural networks getting deeper, you're also focusing less on the news flow, which is driving the herd, right? That's the second benefit. And I think the third benefit of reading is if you're able to see a company's numbers or its annual report over 10, 15 years, if you're able to see long cuts of data, the world reveals itself to you in ways that others can't see. And I'll give you a simple example of this in the context of cricket. So when I was a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old, I used to work in a betting shop over the weekends to earn some money for my college education. And I used to notice that there was a small group of bettors who would come first thing in the morning, 9 o'clock. They would come into the shop, place their bets for the day, and then they would go home. And I wouldn't see them. Next morning, they would come to collect their winnings. And I used to notice that there were a couple of these guys who used to win every day. At very high hit rate. They would bet once and very high hit rate, right? Rest of the fellows would be standing there all day in the betting shop, but paisa nahi banta tha. So I asked one of these British guys, I remember I was 17 or 18, I asked him, how do you do it? How come you know which bet to put on in the morning and you win with a high degree of certainty? So he taught me something I'll never forget. He says that look, I follow a same routine every day. I wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning, sit down with a big cup of coffee, and I read the sports pages of newspapers. I've been doing this for 20 years. So as a result, I'm able to see simple patterns that others can't see. So one pattern he taught me was he said whenever India plays England at Lords in a test match, if Dilip Vengsarkar plays, you should always bet on him getting a century. So, and this the logic was simple. He says whenever India, I've seen over the last 10 years, this conversation took place around 92, 93. He says I've seen Vengsarkar come to England over the last 10, 11 years. Whenever India plays England at Lords and Vengsarkar plays, he gets 100. And it's true actually. I checked on Cricinfo. It is true, right? And that taught me that just the simple fact that this guy's been reading the sports pages for 20 years allows him to make money. Similarly, if we read or your viewers read the same company's annual reports for 10, 15 years, they will spot stories and patterns that even the most seasoned fund manager can't see, right? And that is the benefit of long cuts, of long sweeps of reading.
Wow, yeah.